All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast. If you're enjoying our content, please make sure to like and subscribe. We appreciate all your support. We're diving into North Carolina at Kentucky, an ACC SEC Challenge game. We're going to kick things off with Cody. Your just initial thoughts on this matchup. The line's at 7.5, but dive right into it.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it at first, it's just a few teams that kind of need to bounce back in a big way. And I know Kentucky's coming off 2 straight wins against bye game competition, but in their 2 biggest games of the year, they really didn't look good at all. I mean, the Louisville score looks a little bit closer than it really was throughout the entire game. And the Michigan State game, they kind of just got flat out dominated. I know Michigan State made a lot of threes in that game and a lot of shots that they're normally not making at a super high clip, but regardless, they got dominated up front. They were going to lose that game if Michigan State shot 20% from 3. So we kind of need to see Kentucky get better in a few areas. I think it's mostly on the offensive end for me. They've just looked a little bit clunky. Like, I think a lot of the issues that we had in the preseason are kind of coming to the forefront. And some of that is because of injuries, with Jaland Lowe not being in the mix. It's kind of moved different guys into like more primary creation roles that they're not typically in or haven't been in their entire career. Like a guy like Denzel Aberdeen, he's actually been good so far this season, but wasn't hyper efficient against Louisville, if I remember correctly, and struggled against Michigan State as well from the field. But, he's kind of been manning the point guard duties since Jaland Lowe's been out, and Otega Oweh hasn't really gotten going yet against quality competition. And I think a guy like if Lowe ends up going in this game, I think you could put those guys back more into like more primary scoring roles as opposed to actually like primary like creation and playmaking roles. And then we also need to see Mo Diabate be healthy. He's missed the last couple games, and if they're lucky, they can get Quaintance back for this one. But I do think he's still a little bit of a ways out. I think it's going to be sometime in the middle of this month, maybe at the end. I'm not 100% sure on that. So we haven't really seen the final rendition of Kentucky yet, and I do think the final version of this team is a potential elite team, but they do need to still figure some things out on both ends of the floor. But for North Carolina, they played a little bit closer to Michigan State than I think the final score looked. But I mean, throughout the second half, they kind of they didn't get any offense going. They lost that game 74-58, and they really their offense just looked a little bit bogged down, and you're going to look like that against Michigan State for large portions of the game. But I was just a little bit worried about how stagnant they got throughout that game, and that's going to be something I'm kind of monitoring. And they have an injury of their own in Seth Trimble, and I think he would have been really important in that game as a guy that could get into the lane consistently and make plays for guys like Luka Bogovac and Kyan Evans, who, again, like this is another team that there's a couple guys that are playing in roles that may be a little bit too large for them at this point in time. Trimble's not going to play in this game. He's coming back from the broken forearm, I believe that's what it is. But they've looked okay, Bogovac and Evans themselves. But I would like to see them, be more in those secondary roles. And obviously Caleb Wilson has been great. I just think, I think the defense was paying a lot of attention to him with Michigan State, and they did sort of allow him to score in isolation, but they did collapse on him a little bit and forced some of those other guys to beat them, and they weren't able to. They really didn't shoot the ball well against Michigan State. They got some open looks, didn't knock them down. So that's going to be something that they need to do here. But I guess the main storyline of this game is like, 2 teams that I wouldn't say need a marquee win, but are looking to at least bounce back on the big stage.
Yeah, absolutely. Marcus, what are your initial thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what Cody said. Probably one of the biggest surprises to me thus far through the first 7 games Kentucky has played has been Otega Oweh really just not getting going at all. He's averaging 13 points a game, which I think is about 4 points down from what he averaged last season. And they've played a lot of bye competition. They've played a couple big games, which he has struggled in as well. And I think a lot of that does have to do with the more on-ball responsibilities that he's had, like Cody said. He just isn't shooting the ball well. He hasn't looked overly comfortable in either of those 2 games against Louisville or Michigan State. Like it just felt like he didn't have the same aggression that we saw from him last season. So I'll be looking for that in this game. Hopefully, he can have his sort of coming out party of 2025. He had a good game in their last game, at least efficiency wise, 6 of 11 against Tennessee Tech. But I want to see it in a big game here, which I think he can. Especially with a guy like Seth Trimble out on the other side. I think they can take advantage a little bit more of the defensive guard group of North Carolina. But I think both teams are really looking for a big win. I think this should be a really fun game. Both teams want to play a fast pace, want to get out and run. Both teams put up a lot of points, right? Kentucky's at about 90 a game. North Carolina's around 84. I think this game, could come down to, at least from what we've seen so far from these teams, it could come down to the final possession or the final possessions, the last 5 minutes. Obviously, Kentucky being at home gives them a little bit of a leg up there, but I think it should be a really fun game. Both teams, I think, will be playing fairly desperate here early in the season, not necessarily from like their national outlook, but more just, really yearning for that first true big win.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think both teams are hungry to get on the board of, at least one big win under their belt. With that being said, Cody, what is North Carolina's keys to the game to come out of here with a win?
Yeah, I think they need to be like rock solid defensively in this game. The point that Marcus mentioned about those guards being locked in for this game and being good at the point of attack. Because, I know Kentucky's had issues, but Aberdeen, Oweh, and all those other guys that they have at their disposal, are still very good players and very good downhill drivers. So Kyan Evans and Luka Bogovac need to be really good as point of attack defenders in this game. I think Carolina just needs a great game from one of those guys on the offensive end as well, from either Evans or Bogovac, particularly in the pick and roll game to get something going. Like Kentucky will. They play more of a drop coverage, and they try to get you off the 3-point line a little bit. I know Kentucky's given up their share of threes this season off the catch, but and that's kind of what North Carolina wants. But I do think at the end of the day, Kentucky's kind of looking to run you off the 3-point line and force you into your primary creation game. And I think especially when Quaintance is back, that's going to be like the backbone of this defense. That's what the scheme's going to look like. So it's going to be up to, the pick and roll combo of either Bogovac and Veesaar, Bogovac and Wilson, or Evans with either one of those two guys to be, highly efficient. Kyan Evans has kind of struggled with ball security this season. He has a 27% turnover rate this year, just compared to a 26% assist rate. So he's going to have to be much better. But overall, I mean, they're going to be up against a Kentucky team that's going to be extremely hungry, playing their first big game in their home arena. And I know Carolina's coming off that loss, but they are shorthanded at this point in time as well. And it did seem like they were missing Seth Trimble quite a bit last game. So it's going to be tough. I think the battle on the boards is going to be, it should be even. And, these are two defenses that don't really like to foul either. So in the margins, it's probably going to be fairly similar. I think these teams are designed to operate the same way. It's just a matter of, can North Carolina's guards step up in a road environment?
Marcus, what are Kentucky's keys to the game?
Yeah, I think they need to continue, to be really solid on the defensive glass. They've been one of the top teams in the country thus far. Third in defensive rebound rate. North Carolina is the team that has shown to be able to get on the offensive glass a little bit. And like Cody said, I do expect it to be pretty even in this area, but I think this is an area where, they really need to make sure they're still really solid in, which I do expect. I think they need to make shots in this game, which obviously goes without saying, but I think it's deeper than that. I think they need to really hunt layups and threes, which, in this matchup against North Carolina, right? North Carolina doesn't give up a ton of threes. Their 3-point rate is low. They try to funnel things kind of into the mid-range, and they have a really good rim defense as well. They've been allowing 47.7% at the rim. But for Kentucky, I think you got to hunt those shots, right? You don't want to live in the mid-range. It's where Kentucky shoots their lowest percentage from the field. They're 34.4% in the mid-range. So it's what Carolina wants you to shoot, but Kentucky can't fall in love with it, which I think at times they do with some of these guards, Aberdeen and Oweh in particular, right? So I think they got to continue to kind of hunt these great shots, right? Hunting wide open catch and shoot threes, which, may be tougher to come by without a primary creator if Lowe can't go. And then I think limiting, Carolina's free throw attempts is going to be big as well. If Carolina does get to the free throw line a lot, obviously, like you said, Cody, Kentucky does a good job of not fouling. But Carolina is going to, be putting pressure on you, trying to get to the foul line. They do a great job of drawing fouls, getting there. So continuing to play disciplined as they have all season is going to be a pretty big key in this game. And then, on the defensive end, I think it's really going to come down to, funneling, making some of these guys like Bogovac and Evans be the creators that you want them to be, right? Making them put the ball on the deck, make them have to take mid-range shots, right? Because the one thing that you'll notice, and we talked about it a lot coming into the season, right, is Carolina improved their shooting, right? Numbers say so far they haven't, right? But I know that they're a better shooting team than what they've shown so far, right? They're 31.8% from three on the season, 220. That's 229th in the country. To me, they're a better shooting team than that. And, you don't want to be the team where they finally catch fire. So I think it's, funneling stuff into the mid-range as well, which, we've seen Kentucky 317th in three-point rate defense thus far this season. So, you don't want to be the team that this Carolina team gets things going from behind the arc against. So I think that's going to be a key as well. Continue to make those guys like Evans and Bogovac put the ball on the deck, make them, have to make decisions off the bounce.
Some good points all around. Cody, who's your pick to come home with this one?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wish I knew who was going to be going for this game, who was at 100% full strength. But I think either way, Kentucky finds a way to get the job done at home. I do think it's going to be led by their backcourt of Oweh and Aberdeen. I think they're going to be able to take advantage of Kyan Evans and Bogovac as defenders. I'm not saying they're like terrible defenders by any means, but they definitely have the size advantage. They have the athleticism advantage, and they're going to be able to get downhill against this drop coverage, be able to, attack Veesaar a little bit. I know that, Carolina's defense up front has been pretty good this year. They're like, top 10 in 2-point field goal percentage defense. It's been a very good start for them, but I do think this is a spot where Oweh and particularly Oweh can get right. So if I knew Diabate was playing, I could definitively say I think Kentucky gets the job done, because that's the defender that you could throw at Caleb Wilson for all 40 minutes. Because at this point in time, I don't really know if they have a fantastic one if he's unable to go. I don't think it's Cam Williams. I think he's a little bit too thin, and you can't really throw one of the bigs at Caleb Wilson. But at the end of the day, I think Kentucky has enough depth, and I think they can get right a little bit on the offensive end. I'll say they win in a fairly tight one, 83-78.
Marcus, who do you got?
Yeah, I have Kentucky winning this one as well. I think they finally pick up that win they've been searching for. I think Oweh does get right. I know I've been kind of calling for it for a while now, so you can't really – I don't really know what it's worth, but I think –
You'll be right one of these times.
I'll be right one time, yeah. So I just think it is going to be a close one. I think they get the job done. I think they're able to take advantage of the Carolina point of attack defense without Seth Trimble. So I'm gonna take Kentucky. I'll say they win by. I think they cover. Carolina covers as well. I'll say by 6.
This is a tough matchup, of course, with the injuries. Do you guys think that changes at all with Diabate and Lowe potentially sitting?
Yeah, if Diabate doesn't go, I think Carolina has a real chance, because, like I said, Kentucky doesn't really have a guy to throw at Wilson for all 40 minutes, because I think Diabate is one of the best defenders in the country. He hasn't been really at 100% throughout this whole year and hasn't played a massive minute share, but a part of that is from, the 2 games that he missed. But yeah, if he doesn't go, I do think Carolina has a chance to steal this one.
Marcus, what about you if those 2 don't go?
Yeah, I definitely think so. Obviously, those are 2 really good players for Kentucky that are crucial to what they do. They've been without Lowe for most of the season, so I'll kind of leave him out of it. But if Diabate doesn't, like, even if he does, like, we both think this game is going to be fairly close. I think Carolina still has a shot, right? Like,
absolutely.
Carolina does have some things that set up decently well, I think, in this matchup that could lead to a victory. So I wouldn't be shocked by either outcome.
I hope they do play. Of course, we like to see teams at full strength, but that wraps it up here. As always, thank you for listening to the Mainly Hoops podcast.